without you, it is not possible to have a wonderful discussion. And then I would like to thank all the professors, Professor Kuntal De especially, who specializes in this area and would be talking to you about it. And we have Professor Roshan Sharma. He handles students' affairs, so he would be talking to you about how people manage their lives during this pandemic in South Asia. We also have Professor Manju Jedka, who is at Sholini University in Himachal. Roshan is also in Himachal, and she would be joining in a moment. So she would also be talking about how education is transforming in South Asia. I'm handling many things, admit people in, and so on. And so I would like to thank other people who are supporting in the end. That's our style. I've been told not to do that in the beginning. So anyway, so I will do that in the end, but without the effort of everyone, it is impossible to have a discussion like this. So having said this, let me begin what I want to say today, and it has to be short because I want that you speak, and we have three wonderful speakers to speak. So today we are talking about the post-pandemic environment in South Asia. Pandemic, as it spreads in the world, begins from one place and spreads. And therefore, it has to be global in nature because the disease is global in nature. What is happening in South Asia? A lot of you who are connected to South Asia, some of my students, some people who live in South Asia, in different parts of the countries of South Asia, know very well what is happening. And my KO students whom we study together, Japan and India, we have been talking about it. So the pandemic is a very painful reminder of our misperception about capitalism, misperception about globalization, a misperception about environment, and finally, a misperception about human life. So we've been living reasonably well with some problem or the other after the Second World War. But now we want to reassess these four important aspects, whether capitalism, the way it moves, works for us or not. Whether globalization, the way it moves, is good for us. It's one of the functions of globalization, the pandemic. Our environment, how do we live? How do we restructure our own thinking towards it? And human life itself. What are the things that we want and must have? And what are the things we don't want and should not have? So South Asia today, in my opinion, you may disagree with me, has exhausted all strategies to fight the pandemic and is now talking about immunity, talking about local medicine, and it's talking about a new normal. These three words, immunity, you must develop immunity. You must use local medicine. You must have a new normal, that this is the normal condition. These are the phrases we hear. And that means we've exhausted our resources in that sense. Rich countries are trying to save their economy by opening regular institutions, even at the cost of more infection, and saving jobs. So there is a very delicate balance. Save lives, save how many lives to save, how many jobs to lose. It's a very delicate kind of thing that governments are trying to do. Countries are restructuring global supply chains, where things are coming from and turning inward. Japan has given a lot of money for companies to move out of other countries, especially China. Countries are restructuring everything that they can think of. We don't know whether it will work or not, but they're trying very hard. The World Bank estimates the projected GDP in South Asia in 2020. About South Asia would mean India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and Pakistan, according to the World Bank. Their economy will go down from 1.5% to minus 3%. 1.5 to minus 3%. This is the projection. Maybe a little bit wrong here and there, but that's how they see it. So the economic slowdown is also testing our secular and democratic fabric. People are fighting more amongst each other. So South Asia has one of the most unequal societies in the world. And the pandemic has worsened economy. It is hitting hard the poor and the informal workers. This is the report of the World Bank 2020 in April. It's 2 months ago. So the poor will have less opportunity in childhood, mobility in adulthood, less, and less support throughout life. This is the World Bank's projection. South Asian governments must protect the poorest through some kind of a monetary stimulus, accommodation, jobs. These are the three things. It's very easy to say here, but so difficult to do. How to do? We must create value in health, education, and life in South Asia. This is the first point I want to say. The second is that the online global discussion that we are having today is conducted by, as Kushta mentioned, the sponsorship of South Asia Research Center of Soka University. And the point I want to make is this, that it has conducted many, just 1 year ago we opened, and we've conducted many symposia, lectures, student interaction, standalone lectures, and online discussion. So the PR is over. What I want to say is this, that Soka University has adopted the Sustainable Development Goals, what is called SDG, especially the number 3 Sustainable Development Goal, which is good health and well-being for all. You can check this. And the second is number 4, quality education for all. I think herein lies the very important message. The third point I want to make, that the pandemic has revealed pre-existing weak medical systems and weak economic inequalities and poor living styles in global societies. The method of quarantine or emergency or lockdown, depends on the country you are in, has created psychological pressure. We may not think, but it has, which neither the rich nor the poor can handle. Amongst the middle and rich classes, alcoholism, drug addiction, domestic violence, and child abuse has increased. In slums, it is difficult to practice social distancing. Wear a mask or wash your hands. More people are getting infected and dying. ILO, April 2020 report says that decline in working hours will make 1.6 billion workers in the informal economy lose their livelihood. 1.6 billion. What is an informal economy? Enterprises, jobs of workers not protected by the government. So government doesn't protect these workers. You lose your job, you lose everything. You're not a full-time employee. What is called arbeito in Japan. So this is equal to this kind of sector, informal economy, is equal to half the global workforce. So in 1.5 months, this has happened. Half the people in the world has no jobs in the informal sector. This is the ILO report. The fourth point I want to make is this. South Asia, like the rest of the world, has changed. Not will change, has changed. We are now finding ways to handle the change. Not to interact with the change, but how to handle it. What are the strategies for a new operating system of societies in South Asia? How to create office space at home, handle plants and natural growth, create jobs and supply chain, organize digital and physical workplace, redesign megapolis, the big city, organize new international travel, manage isolation, build new medical systems, new global politics, design housing, food and entertainment. These are the questions. So lifestyle in Japan too is changing, from eating out, working from home, to nightlife and socializing. All this has changed. So the last point I just want to say is this, though Tushita has introduced every member, but today Professor Kuntal De, Roshan Sharma, Manju Jaitkar, she's about to arrive, I assume, will speak on community design, student psychological, intellectual, and financial health, and new education and interaction in South Asia. So after they speak for 15 minutes each, then the forum is open for your discussion. So please write down your questions as you are listening, and please ask a question, make a comment. It's not only ask a question. Participate in the debate. All of you know a lot, so make your comment. And I propose that you should discuss the mini theme under do not state the problem, but provide a solution. Do not state the problem, this is the problem, this is the problem, but tell us a solution. What is your solution to these kinds of problems? So with that, I conclude. Thank you very much. And over to Professor Kuntal De, who is the first speaker.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you very much, Professor. I think I'll be struggling to complete my 15 minutes because most of the things you have already said.
Oh, no.
But yeah, let me start with, as a good person, I should have asked, shall I give you the good news first or shall I give you the bad news first? But let me start with the bad news, if you allow me to. Recently, there are millions of workers, daily wage earners, the workers from the informal sector, as Professor Williams said, walked back to their home in India. There are people who have lost jobs all across Southeast Asia who were not a part of the informal sector. And what is the immediate repercussion? Child marriages and human trafficking has gone up. Only day before yesterday, there was a report in Telegraph India that families have sold their young children because they have suddenly lost their entire livelihood. People have lost their shelters and homes because they cannot afford to pay rent or pay for a new home. The these are the immediate repercussions that we are seeing every day. We still do not know how deep this impact is. The good news, I was talking to somebody in Vietnam, and he said, my friend said that it's been made mandatory in places, particularly for people who have recovered from COVID-19, to have local and healthy food to increase their immunity system. A small country like Laos, small and poor country like Laos and Cambodia have been very well able to arrest the cases to a kind of optimal position. They are not seeing rises. So this was the bad and the good news. Now, if we really look at what Professor Williams was saying, globalization, I think the first thing that we lived with globalization in the last one decade, it was about access. Access to everything. Access to beautiful places as tourism spots, exotic food that we don't grow. I mean, I know in Delhi, some of my friends love Japanese food and they get it online from there, which is good. I mean, I also love sushi and all that, but I don't eat them regularly as my friends do. If you really look at education, it's been again a component of access. We've been able to access the best of the universities in the world. However, the pandemic questions this very access. If you really look at the spread and the impact of the most globalized and access oriented cities, New York, Mumbai, have faced huge issues in the current scenario because we couldn't control this access of people. We couldn't even localize the people who came back with the infection. So in some sense, what we are talking about, that access to everything is wonderful, it's enjoyable, but then shall we have free access to everything? We all know what happened in Thailand last few years back. They closed a few tourist spots in southern Thailand and the sharks came back to the lagoon. The life started breeding and as it was before the tourism. So we all are talking about one thing: be respectful and be responsible with the access that you have. So that, I think, is the primary focus, and that leads to the new idea that we are talking about post-pandemic is localization. Locally sustainable and resilient communities. Now, be it the pandemic or be climate change, okay, the first impact that we are going to see is this isolation. Isolation from a globalized, accessible world to a small community stuck in a small locale. So why don't we start with the concept of being but being networked? Now, to do that, I would just share my screen with you. I just made a small little presentation. I hope you can see it.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. So I will start here, where I say that in a globalized world, the access is the thing that ruled the world, and access is something that is creating problem for us. So this is where I think COVID-19, as Professor Williams outlined, learning about opportunity about how we were living. So 4 pillars of community resiliency to me. And in a world where globalization creates a problem, capitalism creates a problem, are these four: assurance of food. If you are stuck in a local, you need food. Everybody needs food. And the moment you go hungry, there comes crime, which is already happening in some parts of eastern India, which was also devastated by the cyclone. People don't have food. And first, people resorted to begging, then they resorted to crime. Wellness and health. We still do not have, where I'm going back to what I heard from Vietnam and Cambodia. They're saying local food is better, that's healthier, that's accessible, that's right here. I don't have to import it. Okay? And that also grows local immunity system. Learning, education. Now, we are talking about post-COVID-19, a situation where we need new knowledge, new livelihood knowledge. But the question is, how long can we, what are these new skills and new knowledge? How long can we say that we will have to learn new knowledge or new skills? What happens if tomorrow something else comes? How do we prepare ourselves for that? So we perhaps need to move into a situation where we are saying we need the knowledge and skills where we can analyze the context and respond to it. I think that's something which is far more important in the coming days, to have the collective intelligence where we understand a situation and take steps accordingly, understand context. And finally, I think it's very important that we look into essential services and how to build them locally, right? Because one of the biggest issues that we are facing is also migrated communities who have gone far away for looking for jobs. So local employability may help. So in some sense, what we are saying is we need a local and community focused resiliency to sudden changes and disruption of the regularity of life. Okay? The first one is, of course, the food security. Now, how do we attain them? Last year, towards the end, I was traveling in Turkey, and they have done something which is wonderful. They have started planting fruit trees on the road dividers and all available parts of their cities, because there's a huge influx of refugees, displaced communities that took place over last few years in Turkey. And the only possible way to ensure that they have is just to grow fruit bearing trees. Food is not essentially what we eat in a dish. What is served. We can get it, we can process it, we can do whatever. If there is a fruit tree, at least I don't go hungry. So this is one of the things that is essential, and I think particularly the fragile communities need to look at subsistence agriculture. The same thing in Bangladesh. There is an NGO, a civil society organization, who have already created backyard farming by women and floating farming by women in certain parts which gets disconnected during the flood and during the monsoons. So that is one focus that we must have, is subsistence agriculture. The other thing is, even in urban areas, like right at this moment, we live in a small community, and getting fresh supply of food, particularly that of vegetables, are becoming an issue at times. I am sitting in one of the states which is most badly affected in COVID-19. Whereas we have land in here, we have land which we have balconies, we have terraces. Now, it is possible to grow vegetables for each one of us and for the community in our terraces, balcony, and available land. Now, this is something that needs to be focused upon, whatever we can grow. Now, the problem is that if you work full time and if you travel far to work, this is not possible. So perhaps working from home or reduced work time would help in creating subsistent agriculture in particularly in urban societies. Community farming. This is a tall order because we have a lot of landless people who don't own land. Okay. Now, is it possible that we start community farming? There are already community farmers in Kerala, in Tamil Nadu, in India, which I know of, in other places, many other places. In fact, last year also I have seen a community farm in Nom Klon area of Cambodia. Assuring nutrition. This is another thing. Food somehow has become more of a recreation than just nutrition. Of course, food is a recreation. It has to be that way. Otherwise, the culture associated with food just completely collapses, crumbles. But I think it's very important that we go back to a nutrient focus, the locally grown nutrient focused food habit. Yeah. Wellness and health. What we have just seen is a huge absence of public health awareness. In India, we are still seeing the social distancing, understanding of COVID, understanding of anything is a big gap. So I think it's very important that we create mandatory public education for diseases, particularly in a globalized society. We need to create a public health education system, which was perhaps not required earlier, but today it is. Yes, Professor Williams said, and I strongly say that, stopping mindless destruction of the natural environment. Our doctors keep on saying that our children should play in mud to get better immunity system rather than living on antibiotics. Where is that mud? If we have a small piece of land, we cover it with concrete saying that, okay, we don't have to maintain it. Okay, all the traditional trees are going from even our education campuses. We don't plant neem anymore. We don't plant so many local trees anymore. We focus on planting palms to beautify that land because it's easier to maintain. One leaf falls, you drag it, you throw it out. That has to be completely stopped. I think we need to go back to that biodiverse world. Assessing local specific immunity needs. Human diversity is very important. It is a difficult thing to say right at this moment because a lot of us have migrated to other locales. The weather is different, the food is different, the culture is different. But I think it's very important to understand what I need here. Like, for example, Mumbai is just about 100 kilometers from where I'm sitting. But right at this moment, Mumbai is extremely hot, humid, and it's raining. In Pune, it's rather cold. These diversities lead to the immune system or understanding of the immunity system. And we need to understand the local weather and climate and map our immunity system on human diversity. Rebuilding schools and curricula that allow children to grow up in more and more natural environment. I think it's an absolute must. I do not know much about Japan, but in here, we have schools which do not have fields, which do not have natural spaces. I think that contact to build our wellness and immunity is absolutely must. How can I? And this is something which has been proven. One of my friends from Sydney University, she takes physics classes in the Sydney Zoo or out in the open. We have a report from Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, which says the children who grow up in out in the open in the villages have a better scientific conception than the city children, simply because of the fact they understand gravity better because they see things falling around them. We don't see things falling around us. So I think it's very important that environment is ensured and redesign the school and curricula accordingly. Design paramedical services. Every culture has a paramedical service built in, the basic of the local immunity system. There is always home remedy for slight, cough, cold, or even fever, or even stomach pain, and all that. Now, we cannot completely forget that this is our first defense against a virus attack, our homemade recipes, our homemade medicines. And we had a whole corps of midwives, other people, grandmothers who did this paramedical services every day for us. We cannot forget them. We have to bring them back to kind of continue our daily fight against smaller diseases and build our wellness and immunity system. Yes, I think Professor Manju is going to extensively talk on this, so I'll keep it short, but learning. Developing local employability and reduce migration. We need to look at the local economy and rebuild it accordingly, rebuild our learning accordingly. Focus on conception development, questioning attitude. At least one of the things that is the precursor of contextual understanding or analysis is this questioning attitude. I think the scientific method of questioning attitude and questioning authority needs to come back to all curriculum starting from school. Because to me, it's simple. If you have to develop a scientific attitude, the first thing that you start with is questioning the authority. That's what Newton did. He questioned all the authorities before him, saying, no, that's not the right way of thinking. I think we talk about innovation in today's world. Innovation cannot happen without two things. One, you only innovate when you face difficulty. If you are comfortable, you don't innovate anything. And the second is to question what has happened before. I think that's very important. Developing abilities to learn and respond in a context. I think that's very important. We do not know what are the emerging contexts going to be in future. Today it's pandemic, tomorrow it's flood, third day it's a storm. Do we really know what skills do we need? The only thing that will save us is learning to learn. How quickly can we learn in a context and respond? Develop curriculum that builds collective learning and team response capacity from very early years. I think our education system, at least in our country, has become very individual oriented, individual merit based. I think team building, understanding of empathy has to go back to school, and they should start as a collective response team from very early years. Emphasis on knowledge diversity, not just one way of doing it. 500 ways of doing the same thing is possible. And that's what needs to come back to education. I think these are all possibilities. What is your context? Select the best possibility in that context. So knowledge diversity is something which is absolutely necessary. I haven't studied science the way perhaps somebody from an Aboriginal community has studied science. Now, I need to understand their understanding of science so that I can respect them at least. I think that's where knowledge diversity really comes into picture. Well, right now we have a situation where we have an interrupted delivery of learning. I think this has to, my solution would be, and I can share later with Professor Williams, what we're trying to do is to create a grid of delivery. Not everybody can access everything equally, and not, yeah. The so what's happening here is that some people can access online material and learning, some people cannot. And we cannot say people do not have digital connectivity will be staying outside the learning. We have a grid system. We have TV, radio, and many other things. I think we need to create a grid for delivering learning to people in a disconnected world. Design continuous learning framework. What I have learned today, I think Lars Keitner once said that all the learned in the world will wake up one fine morning and will find their learning has become obsolete. I think that's something which is very important. We keep on continuing our learning. How do we build this into everywhere? In-service training program, public education system, public education spaces, rebuilding museums. Well, this is the last bit. Essential services. I think prioritizing essential services at par is very necessary. Again, going back to paramedical, building and maintaining, food production and processing. If we really look at in today's world, and particularly a capitalism driven world, a Friedman economy driven world, these essential services to plate somebody's food, to make somebody's home, has gone down at the bottom of the pyramid of earning and livelihood. If not on top, above the service economy, I think it's essential that they are treated at par with the service oriented economy. Okay. Other thing is integrate services of the elderly wherever possible. That's a huge knowledge base that we tend to ignore at times. How do we create a gainfully employing aging population? Well, our mothers and sisters, they're all experts in food processing, our grandmothers and mothers. Now, if we have to locally process food, can they come back to the system and offer their services? I'm sure they can. I mean, there is a lady in Kerala, which I think she's about 80, who has restarted her pickle unit after this COVID-19. She's selling it to all the entire village and surrounding. Well, that's a utopian, or rather a dream that I have, but develop a social merit system for essential services and knowledges that we need. Farmers have knowledge which are better at times than even an agricultural scientist. How do we create that social merit system saying that a farmer provides me food, so he has to be equally respected, paid, and empathized with? Community services as an important and absolute mandatory part of any education. Otherwise, we will keep on talking about empathy, but we will not be able to show our empathy and respect. Because only when I know somebody, only when I know a community from inside, I'll start respecting them. And of course, align services to all the local needs. It goes back to the local employability that we have, I've been talking about. Last but not the least, when we talk about reorienting our economy, our way of living, the first thing that we need to look at is communities. We need to develop communities that live and sustain locally, but can share their experiences globally. So it's a local community which is networked globally. One of the things that I had in mind when I was talking about it is that we need to look at family as the unit rather than an individual as the unit. Today, unfortunately, is the individual which has become the unit of sustenance. But it's actually a family. A farmer is not alone. An employee is not alone. When the any employee goes out to work, it's his wife or her husband does the other support system, either cooks, provide food, or do other essentials, or keep them happy. So we need to start looking at the family quotient at the very basis of our value system. We have to bring it back somewhere. Communities that does not access or does not accept technology blindly, but they have the capacity to assess, saying that, okay, I need that technology. I'm just because I'm given a technology, I'm sold a technology, I cannot accept it. If there is a community which lives in a region where cloud covers the sun 8 months a year, if they're sold solar solar generation system, solar electricity generation system, it's of no use to them. They have to be able to, they have to demand, saying this is what the technology I need and accept. Okay. And finally, this I think is somewhere at the back of all our heads, all our thought process, is that we need a governance framework. We need a new governance framework where it's contextual, it's local, it's based on local decision making, and it's consultative rather than the governance system telling us what to do. I think that day is getting over. Every community should have a voice in that consultative system of governance, saying that, okay, you can do it up in the north, but down in the south, it's not going to work. I think the core of today, or rather tomorrow's world, is going to be accepting, acknowledging, and respecting diversity of all kinds. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Yes, Professor Williams,
Yes.
I've finished. So, yes.
Yes, Tushita is the.
Sorry, there was some problem with the internet. So,
Oh, okay.
yes. So now we have Professor Roshan Sharma next. So I request Professor Roshan Sharma.
Thank you, Tushita. Thank you very much. I hope I am audible.
Yes, you are. Thank you.
It's a wonderful opportunity that you've accorded us. Thank you very much for that. And the topic that I've been assigned is developing techniques to monitor students' psychological, intellectual, and financial health after the pandemic. So thanks to this center of yours doing wonderful job. So what I'll do is I'll start by briefly referring to the inaugural address on post-pandemic architecture. This basically was a discussion which took place on 29th of May. And Professor Williams actually spoke on, uh, a whole range of, or a kind of typology of, diverse architectures, and he envisioned, enumerated, expounded upon, in a very, very informative and enlightening manner, I'd say. The sheer nomenclature actually was enlightening. He talked about home, house architecture, biophilia, medical architecture, travel or transport architecture, psychological architecture, and then international media architecture, etc., etc., gastro architecture, and the rest of that. But the biggest takeaway for me was when he emphasized, and he keeps emphasizing that time and again, that this is high time that we start, switching from impulsive living to conscious living. And the mantra that he gave us that day, which was wonderful, of course, that's ECDIO: evaluate, choose, develop, economize, and overcome. Now, this is something which basically requires a lot of introspection, and I think Professor Williams' emphasis on finding solutions more than, say, for that matter, underscoring problems, or say for that at times, regurgitating them or something, is absolutely crucial. Because I think what Dr. Kuntal did was, he has such a wonderful alternative vision, and it was really so benefiting, and it is almost like transforming your fundamental way of thinking about the kind of life that you have been leading. While he was speaking, Dr. Kuntal, I was thinking about the personal trajectory of my life. It's like, starting from a village, a small village, and then moving on to a small town. And then, of course, towns in Himachal, the state, one of the states of India where I live, are small by and large. But then, what I now realize is, as I go back, I've been there in my village for the past nearly 2 to 3 months now, and what I find is that I'm not the one who I used to be, say, for that matter, 15, 20 years back. It's strange kind of mechanization, or a mechanical kind of way of thinking and looking at world, and then those, I would call it, those urban ways of looking at the world and dealing with the world and thinking, etc., etc. Of course, I'm in a university system. My job, my profession requires me to do certain other things as well. But in that relationship with the roots, the soil, which Dr. Kuntal actually, he emphasized, is something really, really interesting, and of course transforming too, something that impels you to think the other way around. So all of us know, of course, that COVID-19 actually has caused havoc, and across the world, South Asia, of course, is no exception. But then it has actually shaken us all up wherever we are, in whichever environs, across the world. So it has not only posed health hazards, but has adversely affected livelihoods, which was discussed about, which was hinted at by Professor Williams also. It has adversely affected economies, industrial, technological, as well as educational sectors. And above everything, people's mindsets, that's something really important. So the way I look at it is like, the disruption it has caused actually is absolutely, absolutely unimaginable. So are its repercussions, And in India, for that matter, like several other countries in the world, we've had our share of lockdowns, and quite a few of them, and then of course unlock 1.0 is over, and now they're planning unlock 2.0, which simply implies that ultimately we simply cannot shy away from the reality, and no fresh lockdowns required, and you need to now lend that fresh sort of momentum to the economic activities, and you have to bring in investment. That was what actually the Prime Minister talked about just yesterday, and you have to increase business and employment opportunities, and then certain terms such as track, trace, and isolate, etc., etc., are some of the things that have been prescribed, to make formal preparations, preparations to deal with this unlock 2.0 situation, which is in the offing. Now, as I just said, this coronavirus pandemic has caused, disruption in almost each and every arena of human activity, and students in particular in higher education sector, they have also affected really seriously, and their psychological, intellectual, financial well-being has emerged, as the biggest concern in post-COVID-19 pandemic scenario. Now, common coronavirus caused psychological symptoms comprise, as all of us know, anxiety, depression, stress, tension, caused due to at times resource crunch, at times fellowship cuts, sometimes delays in matters concerning routine academic activities, sometimes lack of sociability, lack of physical peer group presence, lack of community life, lack of social interaction, etc., etc. Now, such a situation wherein isolation be the norm has actually emerged as the biggest, stressors, or a factor causing stress, and this has actually resulted in anxiety and restlessness, despair, depression, and at times even severe other psychological problems. Now, that precisely calls for a concerted action on the part of the educational administrators, teachers in collaboration with students' parents and guardians and other stakeholders from the community and society at large. Now, in the face of emergency caused by COVID-19 pandemic, students require immediate attention, support, and help of all kinds, such as, say, psychological, intellectual, financial. Governments across, South Asian region, in particular, uh, have been severely put under pressure with the result that there seems to be large scale confusion on their part as to which sectors of the economy to prioritize more compared to others. However, I'm sure that all of us feel very strongly about students and the problems for which governments have no option but to work in collaboration with schools, colleges, and universities to resolve the problems posed by COVID-19 pandemic across the world, of course. Now, we have actually no time to stand and stare, and therefore we need to devise certain techniques and methods as coping strategies or coping mechanisms to deal with this medical emergency. Now, to deal with the psychological stress caused by COVID-19 pandemic, we need to benefit from the medical infrastructure in place, where we can proactively get to know through experts online, or even websites exclusively dedicated to educate us without any time lapse about the symptoms of stress and anxiety, and thereby utilize our counseling skills to provide immediate solace, psychological help, and succor to our depressed and dejected youngsters. In case we're more specialized, crisis oriented psychological services available, we must utilize them for the benefit of our students. Secondly, students need to be engaged, involved, and cared for. We can't leave them on their own. Uh, this is really critical. This is crucial. If we are able to keep channels of conversation and interaction with them open and alive, they start believing in themselves and thus stop getting stuck with risk of, say, for that matter, death entailed in coronavirus disease. Now, as most of us know by now, and as World Health Organization also stipulates, that most people infected with COVID-19 virus will experience mild to moderate respiratory illness and recover without requiring special treatment. This is crucial. Students need to understand this, and they also need to know that older people, and particularly those with underlying medical problems like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, chronic respiratory disease, and cancer, are more likely to develop serious illness. Now, such basic knowledge on the part of the students may serve as bulwark against the unreasonable panic that not only deprives them of common sense, but also weaken their resolve to fight the challenging situation caused by COVID-19. Now, another aspect that needs to be conveyed to the students explicitly or emphatically is that coronavirus pandemic has not just impacted or adversely affected them. This has, impacted upon the psychological well-being of individuals from the entire community, including themselves, of course, and then you've casual laborers and then healthcare professionals and the general population. I mean, and then the elders, female students, and people living in stress condition, healthcare professionals at frontline, and those who are with underlying chronic conditions are at a higher risk. This is something which needs to be made very clear. In our part of the world, for instance, our students are not just scared, they've forgotten that intrinsic or inherent trait of leadership in them. So what we have started doing with our students now, we do not just counsel them, but we keep reminding them time and again that they have got a leadership role that they need to assign to themselves, and this is how they need to move within the community wherever they are. They could be in a village, they could be in a small town or wherever, but they have got a role to play. They have got something important to contribute to the community and society at large. So the rate at which cases of coronavirus infected people the world over has been rising. We need short-term as well as long-term strategies to deal with the socio-economic and psychological problems caused by this. Now, lockdowns, physical isolation, this home institutional quarantine, etc., these have definitely aggravated the problem. But then this has become a new normal as well, to use the phrase which was used by Professor Williams, a little while ago. As discussed, as I talked about a little earlier, students have been experiencing and undergoing psychological trauma, stress, anxiety, and multiple behavioral disorders as well. And this has come to light. And we in our university have really been struggling hard to deal with this problem of our students. Now, here comes the role of those who have been planning and disseminating education. So we need to make sure that first and foremost, we are quickly able to reach out to students who are stressed psychologically, financially, or from any perspective. And we must connect with them telephonically through video conferencing, through email, WhatsApp, whichever medium available, and so that they in no way feel psychologically left out. And we need to encourage our students to go in for time-tested techniques of, say, self-introspection, okay, staying with themselves, trying to understand themselves, particularly in the context of a very, very challenging situation. Do, say, yoga, meditation, trying to focus. I mean, all these simple things, that otherwise are, have been part of our way of life, and thus what they could do is that they can strengthen themselves spiritually. And students also need to stay wakeful and watchful all the while as to what is happening around them and what is happening to them and how well they can negotiate the challenge, which they have been facing. So, and for ensuring intellectual health of our students, we need to be really careful, as educational administrators or as instructors, as teachers, professors, wherever we are. It's like, first of all, we need to make sure that we understand ourselves first and make our students adapt to this new normal as early as possible. Now, students are really comfortable. I mean, 3 months back, the scenario was pretty abysmal, but now it's really, really encouraging, and one feels really good communicating or interacting with students. Now they have started realizing that this happens to be the new reality, and we need to adapt ourselves, with this new normal as early as possible. Secondly, we must ensure that there are minimum delays in effectively implementing our academic calendars. There cannot be any space for lapses, on this particular front, because this fills them with doubt. So we have got to be really careful there, adhering to schedules, academic calendars, okay, so that they are not left, in the lurch, just waiting and not able to decide as to what to do. And thirdly, we must try and create as much stress-free virtual space for our learners as possible, as basically true learning happens only and only when our students remain stress and anxiety free. In higher education sector, funding remains the major challenge virtually everywhere. Now, we have been observing regular salary cuts, funding is being choked, and thus brought to the minimal to the minimal level. And students' fellowships, their stipends and emergency financial aids are at times delayed, at times curtailed, and at times even denied, citing no reasons. And students actually, they get literally baffled as to what has gone wrong, because that is their lifeline. They are in their institutions, and this is that subsistence kind of allowance, particularly in South Asian setup. So in our part of the world, at times it's nothing but lack of concern for students, apathy towards one's job, and also unwarranted anxiety or stress on the part of the administrative staff members, behind which they tend to shield themselves by and large. However, these issues need to be immediately addressed, and thereby ensuring that students get the funding the fellowships, the stipends in time. As educational administrators and teachers, we must realize as to how students' problems and challenges are basically ours, simply because we are or we exist because of them and for them. In case they suffer, all of us would suffer, owing to the virtues of empathy and compassion that must remain alive in all of us. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Very nice, very nice.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Professor Manju Jaidkar.
Some of you who have switched off, please switch on so that we can see you.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Am I audible? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. You are. You are.
So thank you very much, Mukesh. And I'm happy to be here with the young Japanese students all over again. I have been asked to talk about the new methods of education and interaction that we have with our students here. And it's a pleasure talking about it. Let me give you my personal circumstances. I am at present located in Shulini University in Himachal Pradesh, Solan, Himachal Pradesh. And this is a young university. It's coming up very well. It is ambitious and it is sure to rise higher and higher. Now, this university is very advanced technologically. Earlier, I was working in a traditional university, Punjab University, and there is a difference. So I would like to share my experiences with you and tell you what we are doing here in Shulini University during this time which is very difficult for all of us. Let me begin with a quotation that some of you might know. The old order changeth, the old order changeth, yielding place to new, and God fulfills himself in many ways, lest one good custom should corrupt the world. The old order changeth, yielding place to new, and God fulfills himself in many ways, lest one good custom should corrupt the world. So change is the law of life. And whether we like it or not, the world will continue changing. We cannot stop it. We cannot stop it from acquiring new hues, new textures, and we cannot stop a new way of life from coming in. So what do we do? What do we do living in this ever-changing world? Some of the changes are slow, very slow, like the changes that take place in the crust of the earth, sedimentary mountains rising up one day, taking thousands of years to come up. So some of the changes are very slow, some are fast, and some are hurtling. So there are these hurtling changes that throw you into an entirely new world altogether. And as one of the speakers said, you wake up one day and you realize that it's a different world altogether. And then what do you do? What do you do? So you have to start thinking about it. Either you regain your balance. Either you regain your balance or you will be thrown off board. So what do you want? The choice is yours. So as I told you about my personal situation, I'm here in a university which is very high tech, and the online facilities, the online infrastructure is really good. So what happened was when the pandemic broke out, soon after that, after a couple of months, we had the lockdown. And when we had the lockdown, the university had to close. But when it closed, so good was our IT structure that we did not lose even a single day. We did not lose even a single day. And I am going to share with you what I have learned from here. And perhaps you too could learn a little bit. Sharing my experiences with you would be for a mutual benefit. Right. So what do we follow? What do we follow? What are the things that we do? In the first place, we moved from classroom teaching to online teaching. CT to OT, classroom teaching to online teaching. And as you can imagine, a lot of changes had to be made. A lot of adjustments had to be made. But then, as I said, you have to do that. Either you shut your eyes to it, you become an ostrich and you hide your head in the sand, or you rise to the occasion. And so we rose to the occasion. We rose to the occasion, and we just went online. Fortunately, we had a good system in place, and that became even better and better. Right. Now, when you are teaching online, and I'm aware that I'm talking to students as well as teachers, so perhaps the teachers would take a few tips from what I have to say, and the students would be aware of the kind of things they can expect in online teaching. In the first place, the length of a class of a lecture has to be reduced. When you're sitting in real time, when you're sitting in a classroom, the teacher is facing about 50 students or whatever, it's okay to have a 40-minute class or a 45-minute class or even a 1 hour or 2 hours. But when you're online, this is what experts all over say, you have to cut down the length of your lecture. Bring it down to 25 minutes. That is the recommended span. So bring it down to 25 minutes, and so that you can hold the attention span of the students, and so that the students also are focused on what you are saying. So am I clear? Is the sound and everything clear? Yeah? Okay, thanks. Yeah. So you bring down the time frame. You bring down the time frame, and then what you do is, it's a form of blended learning, as they call it. Blended learning. For the last 3 months, we have been having a lot of lectures and webinars on what is the best form of online teaching. And the conclusions that we have come to, that is what I'm sharing with you. So it has to be a blended learning, in the sense that you have online teaching and you also have offline teaching. Offline teaching, like, you communicate with your teachers and your students, you communicate with them through email, through WhatsApp, or maybe through the phone or whatever, right? So there has to be some online and some offline teaching. Then you also share websites. So it's not just the Zoom lecture. Online teaching is not just the Zoom lecture. You share websites, you share videos. You've come across a good video that illustrates something that you're doing in the class, and you share that. So websites, videos, audios also. Audios, you record something and you share it. Audios, blogs, and students can do it and teachers can also do it. Then MOOC courses. There are so many of these MOOC courses. During this period, the last 3 months, I think I've done about 4 or 5 online courses. You have them on edX, you have on Udemy, you have on so many other platforms. And because the situation is such, they've made all these courses free. So they're all free. Yes, if you want a certificate, you have to pay some amount, but otherwise they're all free. So you take these MOOC courses, right? You go on Facebook and you share what you have learned. You share what you have learned with others. So these are various ways in which you interact with your teachers online as well as offline. There is also what is called a synchronous and asynchronous mode of learning. Synchronous and asynchronous. Synchronous would be at the same time. For instance, I'm talking to you now. This is a sort of a synchronous interaction that we are having. But asynchronous would be, your teacher or maybe you record an audio or a video and you upload it somewhere, and the student, whenever he or she has time, will access it and hear your lecture, whatever you have to say, and learn from it. So asynchronous is all that is uploaded in cyberspace, and whenever the student has time, well, the student can access it. That is asynchronous. And the synchronous is like what we are doing now, right? Now, you must remember that we are living in times that are very different from whatever has happened so far. And so we don't really know what is the right thing to do and what is not the right thing to do. We just have to learn as we go along. Nobody is perfect and nobody is born with knowledge of the pandemic that, okay, in the pandemic, this is what you can do to overcome it. So nobody has that inborn knowledge. You just have to learn as you go along. And in education, the journey, they say, is more important than the destination itself. So you, the teacher and the student, undertakes a journey together. You move in a particular direction. You learn as you go along. And the best part is you enjoy the experience. It does not have to be drudgery. So you enjoy the experience. You make it interactive. You make it as interactive as possible. And the teachers, they can also have what is called a flip classroom. Flip classroom. That means you just flip it around. You let the students teach and let the teacher listen, right? Let the students make presentations. So you have the flip classroom, you have presentations, you have a feedback. That is very important. You must have a feedback, because otherwise, how will you know that what you are doing is right or not? Okay, so these are the things that you need to keep in mind when you teach in a post-pandemic era or in a pandemic era. Now, certain requirements are a must. There are certain things that you really need to have. What? It's been mentioned earlier, and let me repeat it again, that you need a high-speed broadband. You need a high-speed broadband. You need seamless connectivity, right? Then you also need a dedicated help desk, because you see, okay, you have a high-speed broadband, you have connectivity, but then you might be a novice, or you might be a dinosaur. Like a lot of people of my age group, they are dinosaurs when it comes to technology. And when you teach dinosaurs how to use computers and how to teach online, well, you certainly need a help desk, right? So I knew a little bit about computers. I was a little tech savvy, but even I feel I'm, well, almost a dinosaur in many respects. So we need a help desk. We need a dedicated help desk to do some hand holding from time to time. Some hand holding, telling you how to go ahead and what pitfalls to avoid. And this is something you have to learn. It's really something that you have to learn. It's not an instinct that you're born with, right? Now, what is also very important is that you need a proper office setup. A proper office setup, which means that just as you have in an office, you must have a desk, you must have, all the things that you require, stationery, computer, and so on. And it should be kind of formal. It should be formal. So when you're online, as the backdrop, don't have, your washing line or your washing machine or your fridge or your bed or your, keep it formal, right? So it has to be, the ambience has to be just right. And then your dress code. When you go to work, when you go to a proper classroom in real time, you always make yourself presentable, don't you? At least in India, we are taught to wear formal clothes, to be formal whenever we go to a place of work or place of study. So be formal, and believe me, it makes a difference. You might say that, oh, how does it matter if I just have a collared shirt? Nobody's going to see if I'm in my pajamas or if I'm in my, carpet slippers or whatever. But, it makes a difference to your psychological bent of mind, your mindset. So if you're formally dressed, then you are prepared for a formal communication with your teacher or your student, right? So your dress code is also important. And then, of course, there are little things like you should see where the light is coming from so that your face is lit up. If your face is lit up and if your face is in the center of the screen, then communication is better. There is one gentleman here who's at the side and who often disappears. So I'm a little perplexed. I wish he would come to the center. Yeah, that's better. So if you come to the center, that really would be nice, because I would feel that I'm communicating with you. All right. Now, when we come to the course content, you see, because we have brought down the span of time, because we have brought it down to 25 minutes, it has to be structured. It has to be structured in such a manner that you actually cover the course that you have set out to do. Not only that, in between, you must ask them questions to make sure that they're awake, to make sure that they're alert. So there should be quizzes, there should be assignments. All that has to be brought into your course which is going to be structured. And then you should have continuous assessment. So what the teachers should do is that instead of waiting for the end term exam, there should be continuous assessment with the help of all the quizzes and the assignments that are taking place, the classroom performance and so on, right? And for the teachers, it's very important to have office hours for student support. We have just been talking about how stressful the pandemic is for young students. People like us, we have lived much longer than most of you, and we can still take ups and downs of life in our stride, but you people are young. You have not seen many ups and downs in your life, and something like the pandemic, which suddenly confines you to your homes, that can be very, very stressful, and it can tell upon your psyche. So the teachers should maintain office hours, not only for the academic work, but also for guidance and student support. Right. Then there would be assignments that are coming in. A lot of assignments would come in. The quality has to be maintained. There has to be a plagiarism check. There are so many softwares available, so many tools available. So there has to be some ethics involved in this also. You make sure that you are doing your work honestly, right? And then I would repeat that it is a shared learning between the students and the teachers. Both of them have to learn. Both of them need to learn. It's not the teacher says, oh, I've been teaching this for so many years, I can I can get away with it. No, the teacher also has to learn how to deliver that amount of that information in the given amount of time. And the student also has to be alert and take the same kind of interest. Do reference work after the class, before and after the class. Read up other sources that are available online. OERs, online educational resources. There are so many of them. You look around and you're very lucky that you have the internet. When we were students, when we were studying, there was no internet. Actually, there was no TV and there was no telephone also. I'm quite ancient, but never mind. So we had to go to the library, we had to hunt down books, and if the books weren't available, we had to go in for interlibrary loan, as it was called. Get the books with the pages torn out, because somebody not very ethical would tear out the pages. So you people are actually very lucky, because everything is available at the click of a mouse. So make use of this information that you have. Yes, there's an overload of information, but never mind. You pick and choose. You sift and keep what is useful for your purposes, right? So together, you have to undertake that journey. And then the previous speaker talked about the benefits of yoga. I think we need to talk about yoga even more. Actually, yesterday and today, I have been part of this International Yoga Symposium, which is going on in our university, again, virtual one. And I was one of the speakers also yesterday. Today, I excused myself because I said I have this assignment with your center. So yoga is actually very important, and yoga can help you stabilize. It can give you that peace of mind that you're looking for. And not only that, it also tells you how you can build up your immunities so that you don't fall sick. If you want, I can send you some slides via Professor Williams, some slides which I took some snapshots yesterday in the session. So I can send that to you. And yoga is something that is very, very useful. It'll keep you balanced. It'll keep you sane, psychologically, mentally, emotionally. And if you and your teacher can discuss various aspects of yoga, that again would be a stabilizing influence, and you would be able to sail through this pandemic moment together. They say together we can. So together, teachers and students would be able to, go through these difficult times. And while concluding, I would like to refer to a statement made by Charles Darwin, which you may have heard earlier. He says it is not the most intellectual, it is not the strongest of species that survives. It is not the most intellectual, it is not the strongest of species that survives, but the one that is best able to adapt and adjust to the changing environment. So you should be the one that is available, that is able to adapt and adjust to the changing environment. With that, I would say thank you very much, and I wish you all the best. Remember, you are not alone. We are all in this together, and we all have to get out of this together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Manju. Now the panel is open for questions or comments. So please feel free to ask any question you have or share your thoughts about the session.
So please do, don't hesitate. You got lots of information. We have Professor Kinoshita Sensei, and we had lots of professors who came and went, and Roshan is here. He's kind of switched off his computer. Not computer, I think his
bandwidth is a little low, I think.
Yeah.
Between,
So he's also there, and Professor Day and Manju is there. So please do ask amongst yourself. Anybody you would like to say something or add, please do.
I'd like to ask a question. If
Yeah,
it's okay.
go ahead.
So my name is Phoebe. Thank you for the presentation. I was a little bit late because there was another slot that I had to go to. But I'm an international peace studies student, and I'm actually researching the dynamic between mentor and disciple within classroom settings. So on punishment, I want to, kind of get an idea. So when things like plagiarism or misconduct or troubled student emerge, I'm wondering what are your take on reassessing or reimagining how punishment or how encouraging transformation of behavior will actually look like? Because I find that, having nowadays a classroom that I have experienced tend to be, they're not asking complex questions. Sometimes questions is things that literally students can copy and paste off the internet. So reimagining how teachers themselves can ask more creative questions will actually lead to students not only not able to plagiarize, but also that they actually start to really think deeply about the class instead of asking, multiple choice questions or questions that it's like literally from a question bank. So I'm interested in knowing how you guys will think about creatively reimagining how assessment will look like, so that we lower those strict laws of just punishing students, which ended up they will recur doing similar bad deeds because of trauma from school. Thank you.
Manju would like to take that question.
What I feel is that the word punishment is a little too strong. Punishment is really, I think, a word that we should not use with students because it has very negative connotations. What I feel is that once the student is made aware of certain rules that are in place, then, he or she just has to follow those rules. That should be the ground. That should be the ground rule, that you follow the rules and you don't break them. And the other thing about cheating in, when you have online exams, yes, your concern is very valid. It is very valid. And in fact, I was also very concerned about that. But you see what they are doing in our university. I'm sharing it with you because there are ways of doing it, which perhaps you would also, your university IT department would also be aware of. They have devised a new method, a new technology by which if I am appearing for the exam now, and I have to answer, MCQs, or I have to put in an answer on the screen, then the minute I move my eyes away from the screen, that the technology is going to register suspected unfair means, right? Or if I change the screen and I open another window on my screen, again it will give a warning that there is an attempt to use unfair means. So this is going to minimize the use of unfair means. That's That is what I feel. Then the other thing that they are planning, that they're talking about, is that the end term exam, which is what one always dreads, one always waits for, the end term, that should not be more than 30%. Not more than 30%. The rest should be assignments, and there should be kind of continuous evaluation throughout the year. So as a teacher, if I have, say, 15 students in my class, I know roughly where they stand, because every day I'm interacting with them over the internet. I'm interacting with them in the online, in the virtual class. So I know exactly where they stand. And then finally, we have an end-term exam in which, we have those unfair means checking practices that are working behind the scenes, so they can't cheat that way. And we give them only 30 marks there. So we cannot do away with cheating, because human beings are so clever, they are so resourceful, they will definitely find some way or the other, but we can minimize it as much as possible, right? And then, of course, the rules will be rules. If you miss your exam, or if you caught using unfair means, then chances are you'll have a reappear, or you will probably fail in that particular paper. You'll have to appear again, or you lose a year, or whatever. But because these are difficult times, therefore, universities, colleges, teachers, everybody should be a little sympathetic. Should be sympathetic and try and tide over this unfortunate period the best way possible. I hope that's an answer to your question. Phoebe, you asked that question? Yeah.
Yes, I did. I kind of disagree respectfully, because I think the better question for me to ask is, why are people doing misconducts, instead of how do we, because it's a question of moral judgment for me, is on what standards are we basing on how people choose to do something that they themselves know that it's not glamorous and won't help them to grow. Like you said, they're very clever. Students are clever. So if they choose to go that way, is it because they don't really want to take this course, or they are too anxious? Do they have some level of things they haven't tell you? Is there something going on in their lives? The better question for me is, why did they choose this way when there's another way that's possible? Because if we put them into a box, say this is a criminal act, we are dehumanizing them at a certain level. So I think that's the better question for me to be asking. And that's also something that I'm trying to work on by myself. So I think that is the direction
Phoebe, this is a question that I don't think can be answered. Why do people do this? Why do they resort to unfair means and so on? I can only say that we all have a Jesus and a Judas inside us. Recently, somebody sent me a video clip that was going viral, which talked about the same person, who had modeled for Jesus. After 10 years, he modeled for Judas, because he had changed over the years. So we have the good and the bad inside us, and it is up to us, the environment, the kind of upbringing we have, all that factors into what we become. So nobody is absolutely good, nobody is absolutely bad. But if you want to take a shortcut, and there are so many people who always want to take a shortcut, then you resort to these quick fix methods. If you have a conscience, you don't, and you may get left behind, mind you. You may get left behind, but ultimately, morally, you are superior. You are higher than the others. You can console yourself with that. Maybe in the worldly sense, you may not get, as far as the other person who has resorted to unfair means. But never mind. This kind of living has its own compensations. So the idea is to be at peace mentally. Even if somebody else is resorting to unfair means, at least you're not doing this and you are at peace.
Somebody else has a question, comment to make. Mustafa.
Yes, sir. This is Mustafa from Bangladesh Open University.
A little louder, please. Mustafa, a little louder.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is Professor Mustafa. I'm working at Bangladesh Open University. So I have two questions to Bangladesh Open University. Bangladesh Open University.
Okay.
Okay. So I have two questions to Manju ma'am. One is, for example, at university, the setup is very excellent in terms of technology or something like that. But in most of the universities, they don't have that kind of setup. But in this pandemic, they have to respond. So how they will respond in this case? This is the one thing. And second thing, maybe I can go with Phoebe. So she asked a very nice question, that why the students should feel uncomfortable with this system. Is there anything wrong with this system? Why we ask the questions where the students has to memorize and they have to just print it on the screen. So, for example, during this pandemic, the students are stuck at their home. So they are doing a lot of things. So why we are not putting credit on something what they are doing now? So maybe we can structure that. So maybe they can be involved with the community or some other things. So can we just think in a different way? So just based on textbook, etc., which actually brings all these kind of measures to check them, to keep them in control. So can we think something differently so that we can put credit on somewhere where this kind of checking is not important, where we don't need to mistrust these people, these young jobs. So thank you very much.
Yes, your second question first, that can we change the system? Actually, this is the time when you can change the system. You can change the system now. It's now or never, as they say. So change the system now if you can. Get your authorities to look at it. And well, in any case, you'll have to do something about it, because the old system does not work at the moment. It does not work. And then your question about, what about universities? What about universities which don't have this infrastructure? Yes, it is a problem. It's a major problem, and they'll have to find a way out of it. They'll probably lose 1 year, or they'll probably lose a semester, but some arrangement will have to be made. Or maybe they will promote everybody. They'll promote everybody the way it happened. So we are told this is what happened during 1947 when India became independent. So that time there was so much of trouble in the country, and colleges and universities had closed. So they passed everyone. Into the next semester. So what they're going to do now will be a decision taken at the central level. But we at our university are doing the best we can, and well, we have completed our exams and we are heading for admissions now. So we are working on it, and we are hoping that more people will also be able to do the kind to tide over this situation the way we are tiding over it. Yes, there are lots of places in the interior of the state where they don't have connectivity, and even though we are told time and again the world is flat, but it's not so flat. It is flat because there are occasions, there are facilities, there is that internet uploading, downloading, and so on. But fact remains, it's not flat for everyone. It's not flat for the migrant laborers who move from one place to another, for the poor people who are below the poverty line, and so on. But we cannot do everything. So at least what is within your control, do that. Do that and try and help others as much as you can.
Professor Kuntal has something to say.
Yes, if I can share a little experiment that I did with my current class that is ongoing. When I started the class first day, these were some of the issues that were in my head. So what I gave them is I gave them all A+ grades on the very day, even before taking the session. And I said, see, at this point of time, all of you are equal, all of you are equally brilliant. So all of you get this A+. You don't have to come to the class. If you just want the grade, you don't have to come to the class, don't have to log in, don't have to do anything. But someday, you need to justify that you have this A+ grade. Till now, I think, this is the third week I've been seeing everybody logging in at 8 o'clock in the morning, Indian time. All the 20, and all of them have been maintaining their blog. So somewhere I think, played in my head is this, saying that, okay, can we at least tell that their learning will someday, somewhere, if they take a shortcut right now, they will they will not be able to say that this is what I got because of this. So I played with this, with the grade, saying that, okay, it's your challenge. I'm giving you A+ on the very first day, even before I start the class. Now it's your challenge to keep it that way. So it has worked till now. It was a little small experiment. It could be a kind of fluke that worked. I don't know, but I thought I would share this with you with the current ongoing class that I have.
I think that's a very good idea. That is a very good strategy that you adopted. And I'm sure your students would rise to the occasion.
Helena, other people, do you have any question or comment? Helena, you got something?
Yeah, I had a question directed mostly to Professor Kuntal. So you mentioned a lot the importance of communities and the fact that they needed to have more voice, I guess, in governmental decision. But I wonder, how are you looking to divide each community to say, okay, this is one community, this is another community, and how to, in each community, have someone that would represent? Because I feel like it would create the same thing that's in a government, but on a small scale, divided in a lot. So I'm a little bit confused with just the how do you say, the formation of the community, and I wanted to have further explanation from you.
Well, first thing, I think a community is formed geospecifically. So a community has its culture, its tradition, its living very strongly rooted into the geography of the region where they live. So that is one of the pointer which can define a community. Now, there could be other ways of defining a community. There could be even ways of defining a community by their common occupation. So I haven't really gone into detailing that part. I'm still in the process. Okay, I will share it with Professor Williams with the day I can. But for example, there is one model that I was working on that is based on the total biomass utilization of coconut plantation. Now, there are a lot of people who have gone back to South India, and in South India, you see the 4 feet on 2 sides of the road belongs to the government, and nobody uses that. Now, if you start a coconut plantation, which can grow like 2 trees in a very short distance, you can have timber, the wood, you can have fiber, you can have food, and you can even have value-added business like making moisturizer and lotion and all kind of things. Coconut oil is another one. Now, I say this is a community which looks at the total biomass utilization of coconut tree that has to be geospecific. Whereas if I say that community which is occupation oriented, I'm going to look at perhaps all the people who are crafts. However, I must say that my primary research on this and my orientation of thinking right at this moment to define a community geolocally, that is based on their geographical positioning. The way you said, yes, everybody cannot perhaps be having a voice. However, if decisions of the central authority or the government is based on that locale, suppose, for an example, I'm talking about, say, northern India and southern India. Now, if there is a decision of the government that directly affects northern Indian communities, it's essential that the Northern Indian communities are consulted as stakeholders. Whereas when the decision is about South India that involves South Indian communities, you need to take their thoughts into consideration. So there is not one way. Again, there is no one way to say. See, one of the problems that we have today with our society is standardization and trying to see standardization as the highest benchmark. Now, my idea is to question that and say that, okay, if the context of a decision is this specificity, go and consult those. Very recently we were in a conference in Scotland, and the president of Seychelles said something very interesting. He said, we are not a small island country. We are a very large ocean nation. That perspective, I think, is about everything. That perspective, because even a very small community can be huge in terms of importance if that specific context arises. Does that to some extent answer your question?
Thank you very much.
Karen raised her hand, so go ahead, Karen.
Thank you very much for those wonderful lectures. I think I noticed about the how importance of the imagination because when I started this this season's classes, I didn't know about the how amount of the assessment and how the stress of the online lectures, but that is my small mind, and I noticed about the how to sensitive to this online world, and imagine this world is actual, and against the smartphone or PC, through the laptop, there is a person or the world. So we have to be more sensitive and enjoy and create our world more real. Then power is really important, I think. So I want to enjoy more this situation. And this is the best situation for the learning about new
new knowledge, new ways of learning.
So we are now yes, and I also think students have to more leadership, but this is very difficult in Japan because of the Japanese culture. Students don't positive to lectures or education. So I think society we have to more believe our power, and society also have to believe students' power. So I want to more be powerful and develop ourselves in this situation.
I don't think that Karen's has a question, but I would like Roshan and Professor Kinoshita to answer, say something on this.
It's a good observation.
Yeah, very nice. But I think Roshan can mention about the Indian students, and Kinoshita Sensei can talk about the Japanese students. Be nice to hear.
Okay.
If Roshan is still connected.
He is there, but his video is not to be seen. Roshan, can you hear us? No, I don't think he can.
Kinoshita Sensei.
Unmute yourself, please. Unmute yourself.
Unmute, please.
Thank you. If you allow me, I have two questions. Is that okay before that?
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
Thank you very much for your wonderful lectures today. I'm interested in teaching through literary text. I think a new method or way of education includes what sort of text we should choose. And I hear Modern Language Association in the United States and the present unhappy situation, I mean the shooting the black people by a white police officer, the society recommends the members to consider the literary texts born of a struggle against violence. So could someone give me some advice about appropriate or good text to share and consider the present post-pandemic situation with our students? That's the first question. And the second one is the Professor Manju Jaika Sensei, thank you very much. You talked about the yoga, and I'm not familiar with yoga at all, but yoga's concept maybe and practice teaches us how to face our own present destiny or agony or disease or even death. So if so, I'd really like to know about or study about yoga from now on.
You know, it is not easy to talk about yoga because there is so much in it. And yoga is actually one way of self-control. You know, you control yourself, you go within yourself, and well, it just awakens you up from inside and it makes you a superior human being. So I have been practicing yoga, but I'm not an expert at it. I've been doing it for the last 30 years or something. And you know, when we were growing up, yoga was not available to everyone. Yoga was only in books that were kept hidden in libraries, and it wasn't out in the open. But say in the 80s and in 1980s, 1990s actually, 1990s, we have this holy man. So he's a yogic practitioner called Ramdev, Baba Ramdev. So what he did was he brought yoga into the bedrooms and living rooms of all people, in the sense that on television he started giving yoga lectures. And that is how all of us learned yoga. And then this whole generation has been kind of brought up being aware of the good effects of yoga. And 5 years ago, our Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he actually got the International Yoga Day, which is on the 21st day after tomorrow, 21st of June, accepted internationally. It has nothing to do with religion, mind you, nothing to do with religion. It has a lot to do with your personal self-development, becoming a stronger person, emotionally, psychologically, and also physically, because it builds your immunities. So you read up on it, and I'll send you some slides which I took yesterday through Mukesh, and well, I'm sure you would enjoy it, and there are lots of videos available online. And I would, Mukesh, if I may,
Yes.
Professor Williams, if I may I just tell them about the COVID stories that we are collecting? We are also bringing out a collection of COVID stories. You know, sometimes you hear stories about that have taken place during this pandemic, which make a profound effect on you. You know, you can't get over it. You keep thinking of it for a long time, and that inspires certain ideas in you. So we are collecting COVID stories. I will send that call for stories also through Mukesh Williams. He already has it. He'll circulate it to you. The deadline is 30th of this month. So you still have another 10, 11 days, if you wish to contribute. And what I feel is sharing these stories actually brings us together. Can't do very much. Remember what Matthew Arnold says, we can to be like a battle plane. Seems to be like a battlefield where everything is, rent asunder. There are dead bodies lying around, but we can at least be true to one another. Or Auden, when he said we can love one another or die or something like that. So we have to show empathy. We have to come together as human beings. Sorry, I'm taking up so much of your time. Yes.
Kinoshita Sensei, I just want to address the question that you had about in America what is happening. You mentioned about the blacks, Afro-Americans. You did?
Yeah.
So I had earlier said that the economic slowdown will test the secular and democratic fabric of societies. And this is not something new. If you see the older pandemics, because there is a lot of misinformation, economy is down, people are frightened, people are worried, so they pick up all kinds of things from the issues which are very strong in their own countries, from xenophobia to many other things all across the world. It's not only in the US. US is more pronounced, but it is everywhere in the world. I don't want to talk about it, but you know that in South Asia as well, it has sprung up in a big way. And it will increase. It will increase. What the governments have to do is to be sensitive and not allow the media to take advantage. Because today, what we have, which we never had during the Spanish flu, is a very powerful business media. And countries in South Asia are not very well educated. So this is a problem which is not for you and me so much, but for governments, universities, because lots of people don't come to universities. It is for them to be very careful and to immediately stem these problems. So both the secular and the democratic fabric, the way we understand, will be tested. People are testing it. In advanced countries, it is being tested. So you can well understand what happens in South Asia. That's my point.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And
Ami, anybody else want to ask something? You look very serious. Go ahead. Say something. Kaniko.
I have a question about environmental issue. And then my question is, after COVID-19, I guess people will continue to wear masks and sanitize everything, sanitize their hands, or use kinds of chemical products. So my question is, how can we protect ourselves from virus, and how can we protect our nature at the same time?
Kuntal, go ahead.
Yeah. So yes, I think that's a huge concern that a lot of us have expressed, that what is happening, not only that, even masks, like for an example, in India, we have started using cotton masks, which are washable and reusable. So these are not disposable masks. There are a number of women's group, handicrafts group, even weavers group came forward to kind of create beautiful masks which are cotton and which are reusable. So that is one of the answer, but that doesn't take away everything, because you are also talking about gloves which are silicone or some kind of plastic. You are talking about PPE and face shields which are absolutely plastic. So and then you have sanitizer which are sprayed onto roads and bleach, all kind of things. So I do not really know that this is something which right at this moment I don't see is controllable. But what we need to do is exactly, that's why I said that post-COVID, I think the biggest pillar of which will bridge our health and the environment is going to be wellness. See, we have to realize that we need to take care of our environment so that this kind of dumps that don't happen. The virus that resides well in its own habitat, it's like this. If you destroy the habitat of certain animals, they will start coming into looking for other territories, other habitats. That's precisely what has happened with the last few SARS viruses. Their natural habitat has been destroyed and they've been looking for new habitats. So somewhere I think that's why I said that diversity and respecting diversity will be the key thing to protect ourselves even from diseases and viruses. For an example, this morning there was a news that in Siberia and in Alaska, the heat wave, there is an unprecedented heat wave that's going on because of the oil spill and many other things. Now, the problem is Siberia and Alaska is like a refrigerator that we haven't opened for 1,000,000 years. So is Antarctica. We do not know what is frozen in there for last 1,000,000 years. I mean, there are reports that worms that's been frozen in in Arctic, which is 1,000,000-year old, is wriggling to life when the ice is melting. Now that's where we need to keep a check on global warming. I think finally we need to respect nature and diversity, saying that, okay, everybody has their own space in this planet. It's not just us. There are many other things, right? I mean, we can't live without certain bacteria inside our body. So it's not all the virus, all the bacteria are not bad. We are being badly affected because what Professor Williams started this whole conversation with, that we have lost our immune system because of a lifestyle which is not aligned to our natural existence as human beings. Finally, I think that is something which we'll have to remember, that we are another set of animals which share this planet with others. Right? So just being concerned about plastic or being concerned about what's going to happen at this moment is not going to help. I think we need to think through this matter in a much longer term.
Yeah, we are learning through the hard way, you know.
Yes.
Everybody said for a long time, why don't you change your ways? But nobody listened. Now the very humble virus is transforming us, and the very humble soap can help. But you see, whether you like it or you don't, you have to change. This is the point. You have to change. And I think we only learn when we have to do. We don't learn because we should. We learn because we have to. So it's the pain that we suffer which gives us the ability to do what we are doing now. We never did it before, but we're doing it now with all the urgency and all the determination. Teramoto Sensei, are you there? Hello, we can see you.
She's busy right now, and I spoke to her, and also we are kind of running over time. So,
all right, Hana, do you have something? Hana Ishii.
Yes. No, I just have some observations though.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was.
Go ahead.
Quite interesting. I'm from Hawaii and I grew up on the island of Maui. And when we had this pandemic, it really became evident that in ancient Hawaii, they were completely self-sufficient, of course, but now we rely so much on imported food, and we have this beautiful nature that we really weren't taking advantage of, and so it just became so obvious that we wouldn't be able to be self-sufficient. So I think that was quite interesting that Professor Kuntal pointed out. But,
Jesus, you want to say something? Go ahead. You're not audible. Go ahead.
I just want to say comment. And I just thought even though Corona has spread, our time is fortunate because of development of technology. Yes, that's all.
Okay. Manju, Kuntal, and Roshan, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Mukesh.
Thank you very much for sharing, and Tushita for being a wonderful MC. Thank you.